Hi guys, Jean-Marc the Edit Doctor here today to fix this edit. Before we get started, I just want to ask you to subscribe below. Then when you do, click the little bell icon and then click all so you get all the notifications every time a new video comes out. Today we're going to be talking about exposition. Exposition. Narrative exposition is the insertion of background information within a story or narrative. The information can be about setting, blah, 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 blah. There's too much exposition in here. Exposition really is just telling people stuff instead of showing people stuff or letting them infer it from other things. So we're going to be talking about exposition within the context of the beginning of a story, basically laying out the world and explaining the characters, etc., etc. And I've got the perfect edit to review and demonstrate that today about the global pandemic. Yep, we're keeping it cheery. Now this edit is a little bit longer, but I'm really only going to show the very beginning of it because that's what we're talking about today anyways. But enough exposition, let's go.
We're constantly being updated by the government telling us what's happening in the local hospitals, in the NHS. It's obviously under tremendous strain. I think people are beginning to realize why we have to do this, because we don't have enough hospital beds. We don't have enough staff to look after all the sick and the people who are on the ventilators. The best option we have is to try and not catch the virus and be safe and not go to hospital, and then hopefully we'll get through the curve, and then we should have some light at the end of the tunnel. But who knows what's going to happen when we exit out of this. My name is Phil Wallow. I live in Wargrave in England.
Alright, so that's just the beginning of this piece. It's doing a couple of different things narratively that I think we can actually learn something from. Obviously, there's some aesthetic issues right here. There's actually a jump cut sort of right at the beginning here, right there. Title design issues and some shot selection choices and some blown out images as well. But I think it's really important for us to look at this from a narrative perspective. So what's actually happening narratively here? At the very beginning, we get shots of what's outside, and then we get a title, and then we get some shots of what's inside, and then, another couple of shots of what's inside, and then we introduce our main character. It takes a while to actually introduce our main character visually. It's about 56 seconds-ish is kind of when it happens, right about there. And the question that comes up is, if this is really Dad's story, why does it take so long to get there for a piece that actually ends up being about 4 to 5 minutes in its totality? Generally speaking, there's a lot of setup here before we actually meet our main character. The same actually goes for the audio as well.
We're constantly being updated by the government.
We get a bunch of information about the government, and then it continues to kind of go on about the government's
sick and the people who are on the ventilators.
And then we kind of go on a little bit further.
And then hopefully we'll get through the curve.
So to me, all of those things sound more like governmental guidelines than Dad's story, because we don't get to Dad's story until right about here.
My name is Phil Wallow.
Now, it's obviously very important to set up the world of your story because you want to give people the context for this main character and what their struggle might be throughout the rest of the piece. But I think we can do it a little bit more efficiently and get to our character's story a little bit faster. Let's see what we might actually consider cutting. So I've actually highlighted specific areas here that I think could be cut, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here.
We're constantly being updated by the government telling us what's happening in the local hospitals, in the NHS. It's obviously under tremendous strain. I think people are beginning to realize why we have to do this, because...
So that right there is kind of a lot of information about what the government's saying and what people might think, but it kind of over-explains the world a bit. However, this section right here I think is really good. Take a listen.
We don't have enough hospital beds. We don't have enough staff to look after all the sick and the people who are on the ventilators.
Okay, so that right there is really tug at your heartstrings stuff. That's really way more important than necessarily what the government says about it. And it clues us in that this is really a personal story about people in a high stakes environment where there aren't enough hospital beds or there is scarce medical resources to take care of people's medical problems. Let's continue.
The best option we have is to try and not catch the virus and be safe and not go to hospital, and then hopefully we'll get through the curve, and then we should have some light at the end of the tunnel. But
so that right there again is sort of reiterating a lot of the points that you hear in the news, and it also is sort of saying things that are pretty matter of fact. We all kind of know it's best not to get a virus, and we all kind of know that we don't want to go to hospital and that we kind of want less people to have it. So the question here then is, does this really help us understand Dad's story, or is it just distracting from it? Now let's take a look at the final clip here.
But who knows what's going to happen when we exit out of this. My name is Phil Wallow. I live in Wargrave in England.
Obviously, this is again sort of a high stakes comment right here.
What's going to happen when we exit out of this.
And then we get to meet the actual main character.
My name is Phil Warlow.
Okay, so now that we have an understanding of sort of what piece of this narrative does what, and what might be considered more excess exposition, let's try it without those pieces that I've marked in pink.
We don't have enough hospital beds. We don't have enough staff to look after all the sick and the people who are on the ventilators. Who knows what's going to happen when we exit out of this? My name is Phil Warlow. I live in Wargrave in England.
Okay, so now obviously we've set up the stakes a little bit more, and we've communicated very clearly that this world is confusing and complex and there's a lot at stake. And as you can see, we're able to infer all of that from basically one opening line right here.
We don't have enough hospital beds.
And then confirm sort of what we're talking about with the title of the piece, which drives the major point home that this is really a documentary about coronavirus and the effect it's having on people. We then follow that up with sort of a question.
Who knows what's going to happen when we exit out of this?
Paired with an image that could be someone that this person cares about. Now, obviously, I would recommend some different shots here because I think we're missing an opportunity to tell the story a little bit better, and that might be as simple as shooting keys on the side table because they're not being used, inferring the fact that we're not going outside anymore, or that trash is piling up in the corner, or we see a newspaper that kind of sets the stage for us a little bit. Right now, it's still pretty ambiguous what we're trying to communicate with these shots, but I think overall, with the shots that we have, this is a better way of presenting that information, and it gets us to the main character's story a lot faster. Overall, I think that makes the piece stronger, and it allows us to bond with our main character a lot quicker. So what can this piece actually teach us about openings and expositions? Well, first, like words in a sentence, each shot in a sequence needs to build on the previous shot to help us understand the story better. So when you add shots or audio, you need to ask the very important question, what is this shot or asset saying in the story? Is it extending my story or is it weakening it? Likewise, I'm constantly asking myself when I'm editing a piece, am I saying the same thing over and over again, or is the story progressing as a result of what I've added? Next, I think you don't always have to explain the world in full. Sometimes less is more, and you can infer an entire world and a tone better by saying just one sentence instead of 4 or 5. And finally, I would ask, can I cut further into my action and get rid of some unnecessary exposition and still keep the main tone? In fact, actually almost amplify it because, again, less is more. There's actually a literary term for this, which is called in medias res, which in classical Latin means into the middle of things. Often exposition is bypassed and filled in gradually, either through blah, 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 too much exposition. But the point is, by cutting to the chase and not necessarily spoon-feeding a ton of information to the audience, you're trusting them to figure out the story, and they're going to be more involved as a result. So I hope that's helpful to you as you're building out your stories. I also want to say thank you to the creator of this piece for letting me review it. If you want to check out some more of his videos, you can see his channel information in the description below. And if you have any video editing questions or need feedback on any of your edits, go ahead and drop me a line in the comments below and we'll make it happen. That's it, everybody, but please subscribe up there, hit the little bell icon, click all, and if you want to see another one of these Fix This Edit videos, go ahead and click right over there. Oh, and after you click that like button, if you know of any pieces that do exposition super well, then go ahead and drop a link to that in the comments below and we'll take a look at it. That's pretty much it for me, guys, but thank you so much for watching this, and Edit Doc out.